Father, I'd like to continue our conversation on iconography and ask if you could speak a little bit more to the subject of the theology of the icon, particularly with regards to our theology of creation and Christology.
Sure. Icons rank among some of the world's most magnificent pieces of art. Places like the Metropolitan Museum in New York, just to mention only one, have had major exhibitions of Byzantine art, which are nowadays recognized by all art historians all over the world as being, as I said, masterpieces and monuments of world art. The problem with that is to conclude from it wrongly that icons are nothing more than art. They definitely make use of art, and they have aesthetic and artistic qualities and values to them. But from the point of view of the Orthodox Church, these images are theological. They are visual or artistic expressions or representations of the Church's theology. So if you look at the Seventh Ecumenical Council, which took place in 787, and this is the council that sort of canonized the icon in the Orthodox Church, the bishops at the council had almost nothing to say about art. They weren't there having a debate about art or artistic methods or techniques. They never discussed things like style or anything like that at all. The questions that were before them were not simply theological questions, but Christological questions, by which I mean they saw the icon of Christ as an expression of the Church's theology. So the Seventh Ecumenical Council was not a council about art. It was a council about the Church's theology, the Church's beliefs about the person of Christ. And the idea for them was that because the Son of God, because the Word of God was incarnate, in other words, took on human nature, entered into our time and our space and our experience into solidarity with human beings and walked on the earth, just as you or I walk on the earth, then if he was truly a human being, which the Church has always believed, then he was susceptible to being depicted. He could be depicted. In other words, if in first century Palestine somebody had a camera, they would have been able to take a photograph of Jesus Christ.
Sure.
There weren't any cameras.
Sure.
So because he had taken to himself a perfect human nature, that includes what the fathers of the council would have called circumscription, that you could sort of draw a line around him. He could be delineated, he could be depicted, he could be drawn. They didn't have cameras then, so they painted icons.
But if we did, or if YouTube was there, we could have a YouTube video of the raising of Lazarus.
And it's a good thing that I think God knew what he was doing, because had he come at a time when he could have been filmed and photographed, he'd end up on YouTube mashups. So we can be thankful that that didn't happen. So the icon then guarantees the truth of the incarnation, because the feeling was if you reject the icon, or if you deny the depictability of Christ, you're denying the truth of the incarnation. So the icon is seen as a proof or a guarantor of the incarnation. So it's a strictly theological object, let's say. It's not primarily intended for decorative use or to beautify church buildings. And it's not even primarily what people call, a book for the illiterate. Right? That's not high on the list of how the Eastern Church views icons.
What would you say to someone, I've heard this many times in the course of my ministry, from inquirers. What would you say to someone who says, why do you make icons of Jesus? Because we don't know what he looks like.
Well, this wasn't so much a question that came up in antiquity. It comes up today. And we do have very early images of certain things like Peter and Paul from the catacombs in Rome. And there seem to have been archetypes or prototypes that were established at an early point and handed on. In the case of Christ, there's a problem there because we have different kinds of prototypes from the very earliest periods. I won't go into the details, but at one point, the church gravitated toward the kind of classic image of Christ that's known throughout the Christian world. It was unproblematic for people at that point. But I think it's a false problem from the point of view of the church, because we don't claim to be representing anything like a naturalistic image or photographic, realistic like kind of image of Christ, right? It bears the icon of Christ bears the general form of Christ, and importantly, it bears his name.
Yes.
There's no icon, there can be no icon in the Orthodox Church without the inscription of the name. That's just as important as the image. So the image is in continuity with the archetype through the form of the image, but also because it shares the name with the original.
Thank you.
Patristic Nectar Publications is pleased to present the proceedings of the 2022 annual PNP conference entitled Holy Orthodoxy, Presenting the Christian Faith. This 7-lecture series is designed to present a broad exposure of the contours of the Christian faith, both to prepare inquirers and catechumens for holy baptism, as well as deepening and renewing the faith of believers. These lectures are delivered by a collage of catechists, 4 by the deeply respected patrologist Archimandrite Maximos Konstas, with additional single lectures by Father Josiah Trenum, Father Bogdan Bukur, and Dr. Tikhon Pino. For these, as well as other conferences and available titles, please visit our website at patristicnectar.org.